All right. Hey, everybody. Um, for those of you who don't know me, I'm a psychologist that was a professor and then got an offer I couldn't refuse to go into tech and work on safeguarding elections and combating things like health misinformation. I got recruited to Meta, worked at Meta for about 4 years, and I've been working in the trust and safety space in some capacity ever since. Now, last year I was a fellow at the Integrity Institute, and one of the projects that I worked on was this um, platform data primer, I guess you could call it, for the European Digital Media Observatory. And the goal, let's see, did I have the foresight to? Oh, I put a plan here. All right, cool. Um, the goal is to one, kind of demystify the data that these platforms collect, process, store, use, and use to make an incredible amount of money off of all of us. Now, I'm not particularly formal in my presentation, so I have some slides here from that I've kind of cobbled together from a number of different talks and workshops I've led. But please do feel free to interrupt, chime in, ask questions throughout. Um, the deck is certainly not a fixed entity. It will continue to live and breathe and grow. And my long-term plan, which um, I haven't kind of gotten to all the way yet, but is to create an interactive data tool so that one, this explanation is available dynamically on a website, and that anybody that wants to kind of get a more hands-on experience with the report and learn how to like write queries or set up some of the API pulls, that kind of stuff, they can just go to a website and there's some practice. There'll be some practice exercises there. So um, some of the feedback that would be useful for me would be if there are certain areas that you want more coverage on, or more examples of, or if there's something glaring that you think we're missing. Hopefully not, because we wrote this and it's already been published. But in terms of thinking forward and trying to build something that is evergreen and useful for anybody that wants it, please do think about other things that I should work into it, and if there are other pieces that you think are important that I'm missing. And I won't be offended. I will actually be grateful because you make me less dumb by helping point out some of the things that I might be missing. Okay. So platform data, and then after talking about that for a little bit, I will talk about some of the data access provisions and some of the platform APIs. And I want this to be kind of a flexible question and answer session too. So like as I talk about some of the technical components of how the data are stored and how you connect the different variables that these platforms have across kind of peculiar spaces. If you're a more traditional social scientist like me, like it's a whole different world, and it's not what we were brought up with in our graduate training. So, but maybe for you engineers and data scientists, it's different. But please do let me know. And then the last section is thinking about ways that we can take data that are theoretically available via Article 40 of the Digital Services Act and uh, use those data to map to specific harms. In the DSA, there are delegated harms, things like disinformation and hate speech and those kinds of things. So um, while outsiders will never have the same level of access as people on the inside have, there are ways to take what should be available and kind of map that in a way to try to characterize the prevalence or severity of harms on these different platforms. Okay. And I don't know if I can see. Well, I'm certain I can't see everybody. So uh, feel free to just jump in or raise a hand or whatever. Yeah. And then also everything is subject to change based on you chiming in and uh, how much my caffeine actually kicks in. All right. So the first section is online platform data collection and access. And here we have a few problems. So the first problem is that there's just so much. And it's hard for people to really recognize how much data these platforms actually collect. And uh, there are complexities that come with this kind of data that like a normal social scientist wouldn't ever run up against, especially as a psychologist. I was running uh, experiments in a lab setting where I might have a few hundred participants completing a survey or talking to each other and that kind of stuff. But um, it's those data are like kilobytes or megabytes in size. Here, we're talking that just some segments, small segments of the data are stored in tables that are many petabytes. And petabytes are really big. Uh, One time I made a mistake of trying to run some analyses on an old, poor old laptop of mine, and I didn't realize how big the data I was working with was. And it eventually, my laptop froze and was dysfunctional for several days. But then eventually I got a nice warning message saying I needed 5 petabytes of RAM to finish my request. And for context, many computers these days have about a terabyte of storage, and 1 petabyte is 1,000 average computers today. So it's a ginormous amount of data, and that's just one small piece of the iceberg. Okay, so what what do platform data include? Now, uh, I I don't intend to spend a lot of time on this section because I think that this audience is probably more experienced in tech than some of my other audiences. So I won't go into too much detail here, but th this includes things like user-provided content. So like your name, where you say you live, your phone number, and then there's like kind of deeper level data, and these are things that they extract from your devices. So it could be like a MAC address or an IP address, your GPS coordinates, cookies, cross app, data sharing, things you might be buying on one app or searching for on another. They can all they can often be extracted and used by these platforms. There's also behavior generated data. So these are like views, clicks, watch time, sessions. Could even be like where you're hovering, or if you start typing in a comment box or a post box, it logs that and how long you spend in there and whether you hit the backspace button or you edit it or whatever. Um, so it's pretty deep. And then there's also behavior towards users. So this could be how other people are perceiving you and behaving towards you. It could also be how you're behaving towards others. And this is some of this is often used to try to understand like people's social graph or social network and how abusive or not abusive an account likely is, because many platforms they will try to discourage connecting bad or malicious actors, or they will try to reduce the dissemination or amplification of content from users that have a history of um, generating a lot of reports and getting blocked by a lot of people, having their friend requests rejected or follow requests rejected, those kinds of things. And then there's it gets increasingly complicated from here, and uh, this includes things like inferences, which could be from like machine learning models and classification tools, could be like artificial intelligence trying to predict what people are going to say next or evaluate how hostile or toxic or um, how likely something is to be, say, like consensual, uh, a non-consensual intimate imagery or child sexual exploitation, um, all of the kinds of harms that we've come to think of on these platforms, they are some sort of a predictive model that includes lots of these different tools. And these platforms, they also buy external data. So there's often this um, claim that these platforms or these companies are selling their data, but as far as I know, that would be anathema to their continued existence because essentially most social media companies are like some of the world's best advertising companies, and if they sold their data, they would no longer be the world's best advertising companies, and they would no longer be able to make their revenue because most of them bring in more than 90% of their revenue from ads. I think the last year, 97% of Meta's income was from ads. And yet they have the metaverse, they have AI, their AI applications. They have a lot of these other things that just could be making them money, but don't. They still rely very heavily on advertising dollars. So they don't sell those data, but they do in fact buy those kinds of data from like credit card companies and various marketplaces. So they do buy a lot of that data, even though as far as I know, they don't sell it. Now, there's a second problem, and th this stems from the first in that there's so much data that outside researchers like Mike Wagner, who was one of the political scientists that worked on the Facebook and Instagram polarization studies from a couple years ago, and after they published their first number of papers using the Facebook and Instagram data, um, he wrote this commentary in Science magazine where he wrote, simply put, researchers don't know what they don't know, and the incentives are not clear for industry partners to reveal everything they know about their platforms. And th this this goes back to the issue of like, okay, so outsiders don't really know what these platforms collect. And then even if you do know what they collect, it's hard to know exactly what to ask for. So in a podcast that I was listening to that Mike went on, he was saying, he's like, well, we asked them for their measure of polarization, and they gave him something, but when he followed up, they're like, "Oh, well, we don't have that. We don't have that." But they do have that. Uh, and the point that Mike was trying to make was that he didn't have the right words for it because at least at Meta, you're able to create your own variable, like your own data. So like many of us, we would train models, and then it's like, oh, Matt has some random table uh, in a warehouse somewhere, and there's a variable. It's like, oh, that's Matt's interpretation of polarization or Matt's measure of hate speech, and Mike might not know. Oh, that's I have to ask for Matt's measure, not Nick's measure or April's measure or whoever. Um, so they don't necessarily know what to ask for. And then that makes it hard to do research using the platform data, even when uh, you have unprecedented access. And at the theoretically, this polarization research group was supposed to have more access than should be available through the Digital Services Act, and even they were struggling to make sense of um, all of that. Um, okay, so the Digital Services Act, Article 40, really aims to try to lessen some of these these concerns and make data more available, more accessible. And it applies to very large online platforms and search engines, VLOPSs. Uh, you'll see that acronym in or yeah, acronym abbreviation in a lot of places. But um, the Article 40 stipulates that these online providers, they shall provide access to the data that are necessary to monitor and assess compliance. And there's some language in there about doing so in a reasoned amount of time that is fair and still manages to protect user privacy. And then to get to the problem that Mike was talking about in that quote that I had in the previous slide, the Article 40 also says that the platforms are required to explain the design, logic, and functioning, and the testing of their algorithmic systems, including their recommender systems. So um, they have to provide enough information so that people can actually make sense of what they're looking at and get a sense of whether there's something else that they need and that company's not providing. Um, and yeah, okay. And while it's still sort of unclear exactly who all gets access, the Digital Services Act provision here uh, says it should be granting access to vetted researchers, civil society organizations, journalists, policy analysts, regulators, trust and safety workers, IRBs, ethics teams, um, a lot of people. Now, there is some pushback from the companies saying that they don't want to approve some people or make the data available to some people, or doing so in a quickly, timely enough manner. So this is still kind of being figured out, and it's unclear where the cards are really landing on this so far. Okay, so before I move on to kind of the architecture of these um, the data warehouses that they have, are there any questions on the Digital Services Act or on the data collection storage part so far? I'll take that as a sign that I am perfectly crystal clear and everybody's on the edge of their seats listening intently. Okay, so now this is where your eyes might glaze over. Hopefully not. But we'll talk about data warehousing. So when you have this much data streaming in, the way that you store the data it tends to be different than if I were just like a survey researcher or I were a qualitative researcher going out in the field and interviewing people. Um, this data tends to be organized into two main types of tables. Now, one of them is called fact tables. And fact tables, they tend to be event-based. So these are clicks, likes, comments, shares, posts, like basically anything you're doing on the platform, hovering over something, um, whatever. And they're typically in long format. So what I mean by long format is that um, you you will have one row of data per action or per event. So my like Matt might have like if I go on and I have a 5 minute session, I might have 1,000 rows of data in this table where it's like, oh, Matt signed in at this time and clicks on this post. Oh, Matt scrolls 3 posts. Matt reacts to this thing. And each row is a duplicate of me. And then eventually I leave my session and then the next person is in there. So April's data starts popping up and maybe April had a real long session and there's like 10,000 rows of data for them. So the data are uh, like it's structured in this way because it's flexible. It doesn't have to have like the same number of like it doesn't have to everybody doesn't have to have the same behaviors. You just have a row for all the behaviors that the person did, and then you can count all that up or do things with that information by when you group by that user's ID or their name or however you want to key it. And here's an example from the report that I wrote. Um, like fact table might have variables like user ID, session ID, event ID, and these are often stored in terms of like long strings of numbers. But they could also be in arrays or like JSON, which so what that means is like there might be brackets or parentheses, and then inside there might be like a long string of numbers, a colon, and then like quotation marks around a word like host or session or report. And uh, it's kind of unwieldy to work with, but in the actual report, I have example queries on like how you might. Oh, I see some chats. Uh, okay, I now have chats up. All right. Um, yeah, I don't. Okay. Uh, yeah. Okay. So, oh, no, there we go. Oh, why can't I move now? Oh, okay. There we go. Okay, so now you have these long tables with a whole bunch of um, events in them uh, with a key variable, and like these key variables like user ID, that's you, and it will exist across all, theoretically it should exist across all the other tables, and you can adjoin like your behavioral data with other data that the platform stores in a different type of table that I'll talk about in a moment. But the actual report has examples of how you might write a query to pull such data or use such data so that um, you're more prepared when you actually like open up the interface or you get access to the API via whatever permission you have. Okay, so on the left here, we have just kind of a list of variables that might be in a fact table. And then on the right-hand side, we have an example of a fact table. So you'll see, no, I don't want to do that. You'll see user ID and there's like 12, 12, 12. 12, that might be Osiris. And 53 might be me. I'm calling on you two because you're the two of the only pictures that pop up on my screen. So you are my guinea pigs today. Sorry. But um, like each user ID corresponds to one of us. And then the session ID is like, okay, so if 12 is Osiris, Osiris had two sessions here. So he logged in on January 1, 2025 at I don't know, 10, 12:10 a.m. or whatever OZ or whatever this time zone is. But um, logged in then, and then 10 seconds later, logged in again and liked something. And then April logs in because April's 53. And then that's like, what, 20 minutes later and has one session and then replies and shares one post. So uh, scintillating, I know. Now, if you wanted to just count up like the number of, say, users um, on a platform, you would take a table like this and you would just write something like select and then take this event time and then save that as the date. And then you'd count the distinct number of user IDs. So user ID, like this distinct part should only count unique uh, user IDs. So that'll tell you the total number of users for that table. and you just have to specify what table it is and then group by the date. So this will tell you total number of users on 2025 0101. And is what the output would look like in the bottom right of this slide here. Okay. Um, and then the other type of data are stored in what's called DIM tables. And these often are attributes about the data. So that might be your name, your age, gender, politics, the kinds of groups you're a member of, the things you've bought from the platform in the past. Um, uh, yeah, like the actual text of the comments that you wrote, these kinds of things. And on the right-hand side here, you see an example of of the types of variables that might be in one of these DIM tables. So again, you have your key variable, this user ID that connects across all of the different data type or table types. And then you have some examples like name, email, the date that the user signed up, country where they're from, or maybe where they're using the application, their age, etc. Um, most data, and this is a part that um, varies based on country, I think, but after the 2019 FTC consent decree, Meta started using a 90-day retention period as kind of the cap before they started like randomizing some of the user IDs so that people the user data was more private than it was prior, where if you had the user ID, it would basically one query could get you all the things that you want on them. Um, and then oftentimes there's some sort of a security policy with different types of data. So say, like in this example, name and email are probably private and protected. So the platform probably wouldn't want everybody to have access to that. And it might be restricted internally to just the people that need to know, but it almost certainly would be restricted for those of us outside of the company that are getting access from like our homes or whatever our jobs are, not at the company providing the data. Now, DIM tables are typically in wide format. So let's see. Okay, I didn't I didn't grab an example of this, but let's see. Can Zoom drives me nuts because I can't see what you see. Um, can you see something that I dragged onto my monitor?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Okay, so this, oh gosh, all right, Zoom. Okay, so this here is the dim table version uh, where, okay, sorry, Osiris, you're now John Doe. But these are attributes of user ID number 12 and the attributes of 53 and 891. Like you see, like, okay, each row is one user or one person or one ad. I mean, it could be anything, but often we're dealing with users. So there's the user ID and then a whole bunch of variables. And the number of columns could be theoretically infinite. Um, like, I mean, I've certainly seen some that have thousands of columns, which is kind of a nightmare. But uh, like the sheer volume of data that they have, it's just that's what's going to happen. And then I apparently I was thoughtful enough when I was making this to include somebody that was 15 years old here, or the system thinks is 15 years old. And this is uh, another thing that might trigger kind of a special level of approval. I don't exactly know what whether the DSA has carve outs for like young people, because certainly we're all, like many of us are interested in understanding like how young people use these platforms and whether they're being harmed or who's being harmed by them. But in the world of human subjects research, we often have special protections for minors and people that um, might not be capable of consent or um, legally capable of giving consent. So there might be some restrictions, but I'm not sure about that. But that would be another thing where you might not be able to access those data. Now, this is a lot. But one metaphor that I think is, oh wait, David J. So a dimension table is like a fact table with a bunch of joins baked in. Um, uh, well, any table is, well, I it's not wrong. Um, but you can generate any of these types of tables with a bunch of joins. So uh, I I tend to keep them separate um, because typically what you're doing is you're taking some stuff from the fact tables and you're taking some stuff from the dim tables and then like doing something with the behavior to summarize it for the dim table. So if I want to know, like, okay, if I'm interested in people that doom scroll, so I might say, all right, I want all people that viewed more than 1,000 posts in one session on some day. So I would count up the number of posts viewed in one of the fact tables, and then I would extract those user IDs, and then I would like maybe count the total number of posts viewed in that session or the average number of posts viewed in these doom scroller sessions. And then I would have that as a new column in a dim table. But that's a good question. So one metaphor that sometimes helps people understand the relationship between these different types of tables is it's a like a star, um, because you have kind of this core table of like the user behaviors, and then from that you can basically create everything else. So like you or you can connect to everything else, and this is like one schema. So like your fact table might have like the things that we've already seen, and then you might want to like know about people's sessions and or their devices, and then you could like figure out like, okay, when I made a certain post, um, or I had a certain session, like what date was that session? How long was it? What was my IP address? Was I home? Was I traveling abroad? Was I somewhere else? Um, and you just start from whatever that these are often called like foreign key variables because it's a variable that it's not it doesn't have much information in it in the fact table, but it can connect to the relevant information in a dim table somewhere else. Okay. And then um, this is this is where things get more complicated, but um, you can like often like no small part of my job when I worked at Meta was like kind of uh, plumbing these tables and trying to get the things that I wanted. So if I wanted to say, let's see, what am I doing here? Uh, so I have a country and a surface, and then I want to count the number of dis unique users um, in there, and I'm grouping by country and surface name. So here, like the surface might be following feed or recommended feed, shopping, whatever, and it's broken out by country. So they're they're going to be the total number of rows will be the number of countries um, multiplied by the number of surface names. So here, if we have well, we have, okay, I didn't organize this well, but um, there are going to be multiple rows for India, multiple rows for the US, multiple rows for Germany, Mexico. And then because of this query, it'll tell us the total number of unique users in each of these countries on each of these surfaces. Um, we can leave it there, but in reality, you'd probably also want to like limit the data to a certain day or a certain hour, just because the volume just explodes very quickly. Okay, so um, the this in this next section, I'll be talking a little bit more about like mapping specific harms to some of the data that are available. So if like one of the teams that I worked on for a while was coordinated inauthentic behavior, and with that, we were often trying to figure out who who is real and who is not. And to do so, you can, I mean, me as a social scientist first, I'm always thinking like, okay, what signals do I use to figure out if somebody's a real person or not a real person? That is, they could be a person or a bot, or they could be, say, an intelligence operative who is being paid by some malicious actor, some foreign government that wants to interfere in an election, or uh, there are some countries that actually run these complex, coordinated, and authentic behavior campaigns to try to drive more tourism to them as opposed to their rival, like neighbor countries. I think like Dubai and United Arab Emirates have kind of a bit of a history doing that. Um, but these activities are kind of all over the place. But um, if I wanted to start looking into who might be part of a one of these actions, I might think, okay, uh, the person probably would tell me that they're in someplace, but their their all their device data says that they're somewhere else. So if the user says, "Oh, I'm from Kansas," and then their inferred country based on things like their GPS coordinates or IP address say that they're actually based in Macedonia, that would tell us like maybe have less confidence that this is a real user living in Kansas. And uh, you can drill down further from like each of these things. So with IP addresses, like you can like you get some sense of where the person is, with the exception of if they are using some kind of a VPN, though you may be able to detect the VPN depending on what kind, like what exact how it exactly it's set up or when they turned it on. But you can also figure out things like who the provider of that connection is or that web service is. And if someone says they're in Kansas, but that web service provider is only available in Kazakhstan, that's also suspicious. Like maybe have less confidence that they are who they say they are and where they're coming from. And then you can also, I mean, you could come up with stories for all of these kinds of things, but like if somebody uh, lives in a place and they are not, and like they should understand the idioms and the kind of the normal language of that region or that dialect for that region. But if they don't ever use those, or if they frequently have kind of grammatical errors that are consistent with somebody that's speaking as a second or third language, and it's like, oh, okay, well, that's weird. Um, you can also like there's also a tendency for people in some places to use um, the apps in a different locale or a different language than is normal. So, or that you might expect. So I remember I was initially surprised when I was looking at data from India because the vast majority of people that use Facebook, Instagram in India they use it in English and in the U.S. Locale or English in Indian or U.S. locale. So even though they many of most probably the vast majority of them are probably real, the that like that's somewhat atypical. So that might jump out if you didn't already know that. But there are lots of those kinds of weird things where you just have to understand the context of those locations and cultural norms. Okay, yeah. So say more of that. Um, and then you can do the same thing for all of these different types of harm. So Um, another thing that we would sometimes use to try to figure out the likelihood of accounts being fake was the date that that person or that account was created or that they joined a platform. Because new accounts, anybody can create a new account. My dog has several of them. He's not here right now. He's probably in the other room on one of his many accounts, doom scrolling. Um, so like oftentimes newer accounts are riskier, and some platforms will even limit the number of requests or messages or posts or whatever that new accounts can post or do until they've hit some threshold. But uh, they're actually kind of gray market spaces where people can buy fake accounts that have been groomed to um, have certain characteristics, like they'll have pictures of themselves, or like they'll have real profile pictures. They might not be of the person, but they try to check some of these boxes so that the account looks more real and that it's more aged so that it doesn't set off some of those alarm bells. Okay. Uh, let's scroll down to um, yes. And in this report, we have example like we came up with some examples of what data some of like these four platforms have based on what they describe in their publicly available API documents. So here we have four platforms, three of which are considered very large online platforms. One, it doesn't meet the definition of that in the EU, but is very transparent and they make a lot of stuff available. And Blue Sky does too, but I, I think we included that for a different thing later on. But here you can think about different ways that you could determine whether something is disinformation or what variables you'd want if you wanted it to kind of assess the probability of something being disinformation. So if it's text or media, you like Facebook makes well, their API says that they make their post media text available. X makes the text available. TikTok, they have a video description and hashtag names. Um, and Mastodon has static, like these are the actual variable names. So if you went into their APIs, these are the things you'd be requesting. And then for engagement, like um, if there so often we know disinformation and misinformation gets more engagement than other types of content. So we could be looking for kind of the oddballs that stand out and get way more engagement than other content. And that could be seen in some of these here. Um, but uh, and you could also think about like reactions as having more signal to them where it's like, okay, well, this one post got way more anger reactions, or this one got more love reactions. And you can think through like, okay, well, what do these really tell us? And like they could mean different things. But again, it's all probabilistic and you don't really know. So you kind of have to corroborate a bunch of this stuff together. Dominique. Okay, which platform data sets are currently accessible for regular people? If I wanted to start an analysis myself as an independent. Okay, so This depends. There are some data sets that are available already. Um, Most of that, like there are some that actually I created a list. I don't know if it made it into the final document, but I do have a Google spreadsheet where Spencer and I were creating a kind of a catalog of all of the publicly available data uh, from platforms that were mostly used in published research already. Disproportionately, it comes from Reddit and Twitter, like pre-X Twitter, because those data were pretty easy to get and a lot of people publish with it. So those data are often available on like GitHub or the uh, Center for Open Science website, Open Science framework. So you can often access those data there or with the actual journals that published some of those papers. And then the the I don't entirely know all of what's available at present in the EU under the provisions of the DSA. Um, because we did a number of interviews with various civil society organizations, researchers, nonprofits, think tanks, and regulators, and their answers were kind of all over the place. Some of them said, "Oh yeah, like we got access," but it took like 6 months, and the event that we wanted to study was 2 months after we submitted our request. So they gave us access, but not until after the event happened. So they weren't able to use it. Or they might be studying like an election cycle that lasts a year, and the platform's like, oh, well, you can only have 6 months of access. So it was like there are some wrinkles being ironed out there, but um, like as we work more through this, and the European Commission has done more to like work with groups like us to try to make sense of what these platforms have and what they need to formally request or ask for in the legislation. I think that they're going to be getting better. And then um, Spencer's point in the comments or in the chat are exactly right. The under the DSA, vetted researchers will have access, but it's not entirely clear um, who's allowed to be vetted. And like, so vetted European researcher could be someone that lives in Europe and has like applied and was approved to be a vetted researcher, but it's not entirely clear whether you need to live in the EU for that. So one thing that some of my professor friends from my previous life are doing is they have convinced their universities to buy PO boxes in EU states because then they are capable of getting access because like Northeastern University that like they have a PO box in I can't remember exactly where, but there are a couple of countries in the EU that have it's kind of like what like the Cayman Islands or whatever for corporations trying to hide their tax money, but these are universities trying to hide their researchers' locations so that they can get access to this treasure trove of data. So uh, I think some of the details on like what makes you a vetted European researcher is unclear, but I think it's the intent is to make it as public as possible. And then, fortunately, a lot of other countries or states are making progress in terms of like making more data more transparent. Yeah. Okay. Um, I think we're running low on time. So yeah, if you have questions, let talk, like unmute yourself and let's talk.
Hey, thanks so much, Matt. This is a great presentation. I'm curious about any tools that you prefer using for these types of data analysis now that you're an independent, or yeah, any preferences, any tools that you like a lot.
Yes. Um, what they are kind of depends. Like, let's see, did I got a grant and was doing some data working with some of the TikTok API, and that it was kind of not good. Just because there were a lot of limitations on the data that, or at least the API that I was given access to, which is not to say it's the same everywhere, but like the API that I had access to, I could only run a finite number of queries each day. So like I could only submit 1,000 queries a day. 1,000 queries is a lot if I'm like writing a good query. But the problem is that they limit each query to 100 rows of data per request. So if I'm trying to look at a like harmful content is a very small percentage of content on platforms. So like let's say I'm interested in vaccine hesitancy. So health information might be, I don't know, 5% of content on a platform or 3% of content on a platform. And then of that, maybe a fraction of 1% might be um, like health misinformation or vaccine misinformation. So, like, we're talking a fraction of a fraction of a giant number. And uh, we, when we would try to find this low frequency content, um, we would easily be blowing through the total number of queries each day because like when you're looking for something that happens once in every 10,000 posts, then you gotta hunt. So uh yeah, so there were some like pretty serious limitations that we encountered there. And it was also really let's see. Uh, I'm kind of afraid of this, but let's see. Okay. Uh, so one of my collaborators and I we wrote some code here to kind of run our TikTok query with their API so that we could maximize the amount of data. And we were like, we set it to like refresh every couple of hours so that we could like refresh our um, quota. And we each of us like we ended up creating our own accounts and they approved us for that. So like we would essentially just swap out our user ID and then have the queries run the next batch of them and then filter out the user IDs or the post IDs from the previous queries that we'd already run, which is horribly inefficient, but it worked. Um, now, um, if the platforms are doing, if the other platforms do what Twitter does, the like it's a much more technical process where you're probably going to end up writing like some Python. Um, but there are some tools that make it a little bit easier, like Postman is what my collaborator really liked, and that's what we use to kind of generate this insanity. Oh, all right. Hey, David's used it. Um, Yeah. So there are some tools out there, but in Matt's ideal world, the tool is really just like a SQL text box where you can type in like, oh, I want this variable, this variable, this variable, spit it out. Um, I don't know. I, I've not seen any standardization of these different tools yet, but there should be. Uh, I don't pay for Postman, but um, And there are also there I'm certain there are free ones. I can actually look up some later if Postman actually is costly. So just let me know and I will find something for you. And then let's see. Gabe asked a question. Uh, what am I most anxious or excited about in this space coming up in the nearest future? Um, I think I'm most concerned about uh like whether certain governments that I shall not name uh assist these companies in pushing back in other countries from following these laws. There are some lawsuits in the EU and in Australia where there are more of these like tech regulatory regimes and uh, things to grant more data access. So I'm worried that some countries will um, jump in and like prevent them or like let these companies get off without following all of the provisions. And then also, I think that these companies um, are not particularly motivated to share their data. So they can probably drag their feet for a long time. And the longer they drag their feet, the more people that can suffer and the harder it is to really understand what's going on these platforms. So like I'm concerned about political malfeasance and these companies not actually following the law. So I'm curious to see whether these countries will have the confidence or courage to actually fine these companies 6 to 10% of their global revenue or shut them down in those countries. Like Brazil famously shut down Twitter for a while last year because they weren't following the provisions. And Twitter's also not following some of the provisions in the EU, but as far as I know, they haven't been shut down in any of the European states. So um, those are my concerns. But as a researcher, the potential that I might have access to this data without having to work at these companies is, whew, that's amazing. Okay, so that we're at time, but I want to. Oh, are there any other common pitfalls? Uh, yes, lots of pitfalls. I think I'm good. I'll have to take that offline, but um, I'm happy to talk about this anytime. I'm also, like I said, I'm trying to turn this into an interactive website. So I have one other project that I'm trying to wrap now. But if there are things that you think would be helpful, or maybe you even want to help make this, just reach out to me. My email is just my name, matt.motyl@gmail. You can also find me on Slack, LinkedIn, Blue Sky, wherever. I'm happy to talk. I spend far more time thinking about and playing with this stuff than is probably healthy, but I enjoy it. So feel free to reach out. I live for this stuff. Thank you.
Matt, thank you so much. This has been a really rich presentation on a thing that I think is really needed. I think what you said around being able to access these data without being at the platforms is really incredible and really transformative. I'm excited for what is possible as more people get access to this. So, thank you. I'll be posting the video of this, and then Matt, I don't know if your slides are things you're comfortable
Yeah,
sharing.
yeah. They're not like entirely complete, and there's like 50 more slides that were not actually meant to be part of the presentation, but I have them for related talks I give. So
So you because I can also post the report, which goes over most of this, but I'll be posting a follow up, and then yeah, feel free to reach out to Matt. And Matt, I may continue to put folks in touch with you, as I know people are getting in touch with the Integrity Institute around this question as well.
cool. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks. Take care.